Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, powered by the Charleston American Marketing Association. We're coming to you from the Charleston Media Solutions studio. Massive thanks to them for supporting CAMA and the show. We've also got to thank our sponsor, as always, South Carolina Research Authority, for the annual sponsorship, plus King and Columbus for jumping on with us for Q1. And shout out, as always, to Jerry Feels Good for the beats at the top of the show. I'm Tom Kepler, founder of Obsidian Comms Content Coaching, chooseobsidian.com, and one of your co-hosts today for the show. Our guest today is Leyla Gulen, who is a fantastic comms professional and a TV news personality. Before we get to Layla, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Kelly Morse. Kelly, share a few words about yourself.
Thank you, Tom. I'm Kelly Morse. I'm the Director of Digital Communications at our local Trident United Way. And I am usually behind the scenes and behind the camera, but today I get to be on the mic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll go ahead and we'll get started with your introduction, Layla, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Dive right in.
So I do that.
I'll go ahead and read your bio, actually.
Go for it.
We'll go right to that.
Okay.
So Layla is an award-winning journalist with nearly 2 decades of experience in broadcast news, having worked in 2 of the nation's top 5 markets, Los Angeles and San Francisco. From writing and producing to anchoring, reporting, hosting, and team building, she's worn every hat in the newsroom, and passion for storytelling still drives her forward every day. Today, she's a proud co-founder of Tidepoint PR, a strategic public relations consortium, where she applies that same journalistic curiosity and credibility to help organizations shape meaningful, mission-driven narratives. She also serves as a FEMA reservist, where she supports disaster response across the country as a media relations specialist and congressional affairs liaison. In this role, she helps to bridge communication between emergency operations, elected officials, and the public during some of the nation's most critical moments. With her finger always on the pulse of what's happening locally, nationally, and globally, she thrives on connecting the dots and turning information into action. And when she's not digging into stories or shaping strategy, you'll find her smashing shots on the pickleball court or plotting the next big idea over coffee.
We are thrilled to have you, Layla. Welcome to the show.
That's
What an
amazing introduction. I couldn't have done it better. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You bet. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better. Tell us about your origin story and how you wound up in Charleston. You started off in California, is that right?
Yes, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, only child, and I actually set out to become a professional ballerina. That was actually my first dream. I wanted to do that. Wow. And that took me all over the place. I did summers away, but then when I was 16, I moved to New York, where I studied at the School of American Ballet. And if anybody knows a dancer's career length, some can dance for many, many years. Others of us, we retire a little bit on the young side. And I had an injury which sidelined me. And so I decided to pursue my education and left New York, came back home, got my journalism degree. And really, I thought I was going to be a newspaper reporter. I really wanted to write for magazines and newspapers.
Yeah.
And there's something for that skill of being able to craft words and put it into a story and really flesh out something, put it in the printed form. But as soon as I enrolled in college, all the newspapers were folding. So it was just a bad time, which you learn to pivot, right?
Sure.
So you learn to change course. And so I dove right into radio. And radio was one of the best foundations for me as a journalist, I think. Even if I were to pursue print, radio it's quick, it's immediate, but you still have to tell a full story. And like everything, I always say I was always born like a generation too late, because radio was going through so many changes with satellite, and that whole landscape was shifting. So then I jumped into television, and by the grace of God, I got my first job at KCBS in Los Angeles as a traffic reporter.
What a place
Very
to start.
cool.
Holy
Yeah.
smokes.
Yeah. Well, I was, I had lived away for many years, and so I needed to stay home at the time, and they gave me a chance. I don't know why, but they did, and that just sort of set the path for what my career is today.
That's
So,
amazing.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
So what drove you to Charleston ultimately? Because you were in San Francisco in between,
That's
somewhere along the
right.
line there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. So I got my start in LA, and then I joined KGO, which is the ABC of O&O in San Francisco. Worked there for a few years, but I was ready to leave California. My mother and we had come to Charleston on a vacation and just fell in love with it. And serendipitously, after my return, I get a phone call saying that the Fox affiliate here was merging with the ABC affiliate. They're going to become sister stations, and Fox needed an anchor. Would I be interested? So it was a prayerful decision. I had to consult with my family, and ultimately I said yes and moved here and haven't regretted it. That was 10 years ago.
Wow, we're glad you did.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
you
that.
bet.
What really delighted you about Charleston when you came here?
I mean, what's there not to love? I think for me, Charleston, even 10 years ago, it's grown exponentially, as I'm sure we could all agree, in the last decade. But even at the time, it was dynamic, but small enough that you could really wrap your arms around it. There was, of course, there's the Southern charm and all of that stuff. I feel like it's a term that's so overused, but I think that there's such a sense of community here. And really, everyone's here that I've witnessed to lift each other up. You know, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic demographic you fit into. I think everybody here really, truly loves one another. And with the influx of more people moving here, I should only hope that is never lost.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I fell in love with.
Yeah, sort of preserving that spirit of Charleston.
Indeed. Yeah.
The heart of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. What did working in TV news in such big markets teach you about storytelling, and what really grabs people's attention?
Well, especially at that time, we're talking, let's see, when I first entered television, the world of television, that was in 2010. A lot has changed in 15 years. 16 years now. There's no room for mistake. The stakes are very, very high, especially then.
And attention spans have only gotten shorter.
They've gotten shorter. Yeah. They've gotten shorter. I always shudder when I hear when a news organization failed to cross-reference something, make that one more phone call to double-check a fact. But back then, the bar was set so high and the stakes were so high, and in a media market where you're serving millions of people, failure is not really an option. Not if you want to keep your job.
Right.
You know, and I think it raised my own standards to continually pursue perfection, even though there is no such thing as perfection. But I think you're always in the pursuit of, and you always try to outdo yourself. You know, there's no resting on your laurels. There's no letting grass grow under your feet. When you're given an assignment or when you need to cover a story, you got to give it your all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how does that either translate to this market, or were there any things that you needed to unlearn to adapt to Charleston from such a much larger markets?
Yeah. Well, you know, the pressure was tremendous in Los Angeles and San Francisco. If you blinked wrong, you know, you'd hear about it. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not really. Here, there's a little bit more grace, but there's so much more of a community feel. And the connection to people is so much more personal here. So when you go out to cover a story, not only are you meeting with people that you've now developed a more intimate relationship with, you know, on an intellectual and professional basis, but even the people that you meet along the way, in many cases, you've seen them before. So you kind of go into a story already having, I think, kind of the onus of the respect that people deserve because they're that much closer to you personally. if that makes sense.
Reputation really matters.
It
It's hard to be
does.
anonymous here. Yeah.
You cannot.
Yeah.
You
it's
cannot.
impossible to
Somebody
be.
knows
Yeah.
Yes.
somebody
You bet.
around here.
You bet.
They say 6 degrees of separation. It's literally
Yes.
like 1 degree here.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe 2 or 3.
indeed, yeah. And in Los Angeles, you're a little bit removed, even though you still got to get it right, but there isn't that, like you say, reputation, I think, of making sure that, the person that you're covering the story, that their relative that you may know, or, there's so many other connections there that here in Charleston, you have to take everything into account.
Sure.
You really do.
And really here, I feel like everyone looks out for everyone too. So no matter who your neighbor is or who your friend, like you want the whole community to really have like a good light shining on it and really take care and pride of, how we talk about each other.
Well, it's true. And if the story is negative in any way, well, you owe it to the public to tell the truth, So it's not a smear campaign. At least that's not how I operate. I'm only speaking for myself, but this is what I've witnessed in a lot of my colleagues. You don't smear people's names, but you do have to tell the truth still.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a fine line of how you do it. And
It's gonna be a challenge.
It is a little bit. It is a little bit. But challenge is good, and I think to be a good journalist, you have to, take all of those things into account every time you come to work.
Yeah. You've worn a lot of different hats, as we learned earlier, in the newsroom as producer and anchor and host, and you've had a few here. Which role along the way do you think has had the greatest impact in how you are telling these stories?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say as a producer, editor, writer, sometimes you're all 3 things at once. And whenever I had to deliver a story to my anchor, well, first of all, working in Los Angeles, for instance, I'm working under people who have been in the business for decades at the highest level. So their careers in LA span minimum of 30 years.
Wow.
So if I'm editing or producing or writing for them, I better have my information right and completely fleshed out, because once I hand it to this person who's established their reputation, you can't let them down. And that's always stuck in my head, and I think you can't undo that.
Yeah.
You really can't undo it, no matter what size market you're in. Charleston's grown as far as market size, but it's still relatively small compared to, some of the top 5, obviously. But boy, when they're counting on you to be just as serious and accurate in your reporting as they are, that also really raises the bar. So I would say that I have taken that with me my whole entire career.
Another invisible aspect of that comes to mind that you probably did automatically, and some of our listeners might not be aware of, is that invisible skill of matching someone's voice, right? Writing on behalf of a seasoned anchor in their own voice. So not just getting the story right, but getting the voice right. That's got to help you hone and understand and put in place your own voice, if that makes sense. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Oh gosh, like in radio, for instance, I would take every shift that was offered to me when I was freelancing, and I would have the overnight shift versus the morning shift versus the mid-afternoon drive shift, and each anchor or set of anchors do have their own unique voice, and it's like water filling a glass. You become the shape that you're serving. And so I would know that the way that I wrote for the overnight anchor would not be the same one as the mid-afternoon anchor, because the mid-afternoon's got to keep people who are in their cars going, have a little jovialness to them or whatever the case may be. And so you learn that, and you just learn to kind of shape shift, and all while keeping that foundation really, really sturdy and strong that you got the other things.
Yeah.
The correct copy, the fact check, the calls that you made to double check, triple check, all those things. Yeah, and then you've got that next layer of kind of walking in that person's shoes before you hand them the scripts. And we did hand people scripts. We actually printed things out on paper once upon a time, which I don't know if that's even done that much anymore. I insist on having things on paper still. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It harkens back to my newsroom days.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know. So much has changed, It's just, it's a different world that we live in.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some common misconceptions that people might have of producing the news when you talk about, having to write in for different anchors and researching? What might be something that you could dispel?
The first thing that comes to my mind is the 1 or 2 minutes that you hear a story, you don't know the hours of preparation that went into it before that. And I think there's a little bit of an erosion of trust these days, because when something is wrong, when someone gets it wrong, people do take notice and they take umbrage. And, personally, in my own heart, I never want to disappoint anyone. Now, you can have there's a little bit of room in what I do on my daily show here on Fox 24, a little editorializing to a degree. I don't like taking any one particular position on things. I like people to make up their own mind, but sometimes that is perceived differently by certain people. So again, I have to be very, very careful there. But I would say that with the erosion of trust these days, people don't understand that it should have taken, 12 hours to deliver that 2-minute story in some cases. I'm now understanding that there's some shortcuts that are being taken, and that's why things are getting wrong, and they're broadcast that way, and you lose people's trust.
I can imagine with a lot of the AI that's coming out and the chats and stuff that, unfortunately that can become a part of it. And then you also hear a lot about how misinformation comes from a lot of these. So is that impacting the work right now within the newsrooms?
AI is a great tool. I will say when I entered into this industry, I had Google. The people I was working for never did. They had telephones. They had Thomas guides. Do you remember Thomas guides?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you bet.
How to get to a story. You had to find the coordinates on a map and get there. They had libraries, places with records where you had to physically go and check something out to look up information. So, I had the benefit of actually having Google at my fingertips, which has only gotten better, over the years. But now we've got AI, which in the right hands is a great tool. In the wrong hands, it's extremely dangerous. And I would just pray that our younger generations, while they have AI now, you can type anything into it. It'll give you information, but don't always trust that information to be accurate. You have to cross-reference, always cross-reference. I think anybody who's not even in journalism should always cross-reference information. We should always be curious beings as humans. But I fear a little bit that AI, people will get so complacent and just solely depend upon AI and what it generates that they will lose that curiosity and discernment in seeking information.
That's a great, couple of things that we don't always think about. It moves so quickly, it can do all these things for you, but you think about what you're losing is that curiosity, the critical thinking, some of the problem solving, the discernment of really being able to do that research yourself and look through things. So.
Yeah, it's true. And we are in such a churn and burn world now. Everything has to be so fast, but this is where immediacy or virality will always give way to trust. And I would say trust and diligence. You know, you have to do your due diligence.
Yeah. You know, oftentimes people will go on the pathway from journalism to PR. You do both concurrently,
Correct,
which
yes.
is really interesting to me. How do you sort of firewall those things from one another? What commonalities does one discipline have versus the other, and what hat do you have to sort of take off when you put on your PR hat?
I don't know if you really necessarily have to take off a hat to do PR for me, because I think what makes me suitable for the PR world is because of my experience. So Tide Point PR, I started with two other partners, Mayor Will Haney of Mount Pleasant and Wayne Capps, who all respectively have had years upon years of experience working in the PR world, but they also have their own disciplines. Of course, Mayor Haney in local government, Wayne Capps, he's, if I got this right, he's a retired Air Force reservist, lieutenant colonel.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite the title.
Wow.
Yes. But he has also done broadcast. In fact, I think the only American broadcast from Cuban soil. He accomplished that in his career.
What a claim to fame.
I
That's
know.
great.
It's really, to this day, I think that's true. So we kind of have these varying disciplines, but then we also have a lot of similar disciplines, and I think that's what really makes us a strong team. You know, as a PR firm or consortium, I think we like to approach things from a mission of, what am I trying to say here? Crisis management. So crisis management is kind of in our wheelhouse.
Sure.
And having worked in FEMA for myself, I've seen it firsthand what crisis management is like. Will and Wayne, they both have worked in similar capacities. And so I think, our mission is to represent a client in the event that, if the sky is falling, where do we go? How do we make sure that the public understands what the truth is behind whatever, the issue might be? So I'm speaking in very abstract terms right now, but that's ultimately what we want to accomplish as a PR firm. And, I think different PR firms do it differently. We like to come from more of a senior expertise point of view rather than a novice churn approach. We want to really know who our clients are. We want to know how, we can best present them, and have it coming from a TV broadcast standpoint. Well, I have to believe them. If they're going to be in front of a camera talking about whatever they're talking about, I need to believe it. So I don't really put that hat down, because I got to still sit in my seat to know that it's coming across and asking the questions that any journalist would want to ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very long, convoluted way of answering your question, but if there's something that I missed, let me know.
That's okay. But what's the role of traditional PR these days? Now that we're in the influencer era, where kind of everyone's a spokesperson, everyone's got a voice, everyone's got an iPhone or a Samsung phone that they can create short form content on, and it can go viral overnight. What role does traditional PR play in today's world?
It's always trust based. There's such a distinct difference between PR, true PR, and influencers. Influencers, they want the virality, they want the clicks, they want people to lose their minds over whatever it is. They want to sensationalize a lot of things. We're based on truth, and if you lose that, then you lose everything. And it may not be as shiny or exciting as some of this other stuff, but really the other stuff is so fake. And I see it in my own feed. And now, if I wasn't discerning before, basically everything that I see in my feed these days, I question. I always question
Is this
everything
real?
anyways.
Yeah.
Is this real? Now
Yeah.
I really question, and I look for any little, detail that
Counting
shows
fingers
me.
on
Yep.
hands.
Yes,
That's my
Number
first
of
go-to.
arms.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't trust anything now.
Yeah.
And they can make it look so very real. But if you are a true PR agent, it is your agency to know the truth, to share the truth. There's just no room for making stuff up. You can't do that in a world
even
where there's
spin.
so much confusion. You have to stay the course.
Yeah. I agree.
And what happens when you have those clients who maybe want to do one of those viral moments or really, want to hone in on that popularity on social media? How do you kind of work with them to understand that it's more important to be out getting the truth out there rather than doing some performative?
Right. Yeah.
content?
Yeah. Performative is a great word. And I think that there's a place for performative. But you have to have something to back it up. There's a way of putting forth something that's entertaining, but that's also truthful. Now people let so much slide that it's more entertaining than it is anything else. And that's where I'm constantly doubting what I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What do you tell clients when they're
What I tell clients? Well, is it true? If it's true, okay. Is any of this subject to scrutiny? Is there any part of it that would plant a seed of doubt? Because you don't want to become a company where, people are now doubting what could go viral one moment could put you out of business the next, because now if it's proven that it's wrong, no one's going to trust you. And that's not how you build business.
Right.
I've said it over and over again. I'm a broken record, but trust in the truth is paramount.
Let's switch gears. Let's talk about FEMA.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with FEMA? You've got a really interesting role. We'd love to hear about it, but how did you get involved with them to begin with?
Yeah, well, so a friend of mine that we had worked in the same newsroom together, and she was kind of retiring out of broadcast, and then she joined FEMA as a reservist, and she came into the studio a few years ago. I was interviewing her on a disaster that was declared for South Carolina, and as I was walking her out after our interview, I said, what you do looks really fascinating to me, and you're helping so many people. How did you do this? We went out to lunch. You gave me the whole rundown. I applied because they needed media specialists.
Mm-hmm.
When they deploy a bunch of reservists, they need media specialists to then handle all the media distribution. And so I had applied, and they accepted me. Within a couple of weeks, I went on my first mission, and I think to this date I've been on 5, which has taken me from Indiana to West Virginia, Illinois, Oklahoma. I mean, you just get sent all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it was through my friend that I joined FEMA, but I learned so much there because now you're representing the federal government. So it's not just a company, a private company, or a local government. This is the federal government that you have to come correct, and they will 86 you the moment you start telling half truths and not knowing your information. So that was, I would say, great preparation for me to join to start Tie Point PR, because I could see from a high stakes advantage that you want to help people, and you want to be transparent. You have to be as transparent as possible. And those are 2 very important components to the mission. So it was great. I love doing it. I love helping people. Just knowing that, at whatever cost, if it's a 3-hour drive just to do one interview, you do it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you really thrive in high-stakes environments. You're a bit of an adrenaline junkie, maybe?
I would never skydive, that's for sure. I will never skydive, but yeah. No,
That's
it can be high stakes for sure, but they train you very well, and and you go in with an altruistic heart. You're there to help people. So what are you doing exactly? You get deployed, you go to wherever they're sending you. You learn what the disaster was about. You learn about the state. That was the other thing that I really enjoyed about working with my FEMA supervisors, is they put a lot of stock in knowing the region in which you're representing, because that's respect for the people who you're serving. So you can't just go in and not know anything about West Virginia. You got to know, and people have so much pride in where they live. And so that also instills within you, like, yeah, they have so much pride, so should I.
Yeah.
I'm part of this family now for the next 2 months. It's incumbent upon me to be in their shoes.
All news is local.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it originates from that.
Was there a particular moment that's really impacted you professionally or personally that you experienced during your time?
In FEMA, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. It's all impactful. What you see on TV, there's no comparison to seeing it in person. When I was in West Virginia, there's a big portion of that state that is living in abject poverty. And to lose everything when you had nothing. I was there in the dead of winter, and it snowed, and it was freezing cold, and you were serving people who were living in very marginal means. And it impacts you. You can't not be impacted by that experience. Going to Oklahoma, where tornadoes rip through historic towns, and just seeing the devastation, just seeing how someone can lose everything in a blink of an eye gives you a whole other perspective that humanity, humility, and service are extremely important. And then I have to say, I've taken that into my broadcast as well. In my show, I don't look at people the same way. Not that I didn't have respect for them before, but it's a different level, because you just don't know what someone's going through when they come into your studio. You do not know. And I would want someone to feel the same way about me, walking into a room, as I would, have them come to me. So,
yeah.
That's really impactful.
Yeah. Another aspect of the service orientation that you seem to have, I one thing that sort of spoke to me about your bio was connecting the dots and turning information to action. Love that.
Thank
so
you.
what's something you're seeing right now, either locally or nationally, that people aren't connecting yet and taking action on, and what should they be? Without getting too political, how do we
Right.
how do we sort of open people's eyes to something that's really happening that people need to pay more attention to?
Yeah. Well, I think people are paying too much attention to the noise. That's really kind of the first thing that I think about. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of instigators, and you don't want to fall prey to instigators that are trying to cause trouble. So I would just say be a discerning person. And to connect the dots. We've been talking a lot about cross-referencing and stuff. Well, the only way you can connect the dots is if you're handed a piece of information, which sounds absolutely wild, but you got to look stuff up to see if that actually connects from point A to point B. Now, if it doesn't, then it's just meaningless. But if you're seeing a pattern, or if you're seeing where, something is actually looking like it's the truth, then there's something there. Then you go after it, then you pursue it. But otherwise, don't get so caught up in the waves of noise and misinformation. I think that is scary and destructive. And I, don't, not to be political or anything else, but I think it could be designed to erode society if you're not careful.
And a lot of that rhetoric has been focused on FEMA.
Yeah. Sure it has.
On both sides of the aisle. There are a lot of misconceptions about FEMA. You've seen what it does and what it stands for on the ground.
Absolutely.
Can you dispel some myths for us about what FEMA is and does?
Well, it was a little upsetting to hear some of the rhetoric that was coming out about FEMA, because it really was coming from a place of not having all the information. What looks like something is not necessarily true. Let's just take North Carolina, for instance. What was not realized at the time that certain comments were made is that FEMA immediately deploys emergency responders, especially in the case of North Carolina, where, it was of utmost timely necessity to be boots on the ground and to be helping people with swift water rescue, with, emergency shelters, with emergency food and all those things. There was a deploying of certain services and goods, resources to people that needed it right then and there. To say that they weren't there is a slap in the face. And another thing I would say, that situation aside, when there's a disaster, there is a process. So you have to fill things out, which can be a pain in the foot sometimes, but you have to fill things out correctly. People will then complain, well, I didn't get my reimbursement. After I filed my application, I was denied or whatever. And we always constantly just beat this drum over and over again, is don't look at it as a final denial. There's probably a piece of information that we needed that you hadn't sent us, and that there's always someone to talk to. So we set up disaster recovery centers. We have a phone number. We have online support. There's so many different ways and means of which people can get in contact. But then you start hearing like the stuff on the news, and they're immediate to go there, and get angry. When that's where we come in as media specialists, is we have to come out with that information. No. This is the process in which you need to follow. And if you have any issue, you come to us and we'll help work you through that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. What do you do in those situations where it's not necessarily a personal attack, but it's hard not to take things personally like that? Like how do you work through some of that?
Yeah. What I do working with media, I don't take anything personally. I don't. I've grown a pretty thick skin over the years.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to. I guess I'm kind of built that way anyways. You don't like it when you feel that you're being criticized or something, but I think where the ones who I feel for the most are the individual agents of FEMA. They're called IA, so individual assistants. And those representatives, they're the ones that sit down at a table for 12 hours a day, and they see one person coming in after another, in many cases crying, in many cases having lost all hope, having to shepherd them through the process of getting all their information, making sure they've got their documentation. If that doesn't weigh on you, I don't know what would. And these people, they do this with an open heart, and all good intentions. So again, when there's criticism about, oh, well, they don't do this or they don't do that, that's being very short-sighted. You need to talk to some of these people to know exactly what kind of mile they just walked.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that stood out about your bio, just to get things a little lighter here, is pickleball and coffee and working on the next big thing. So what's the next big thing in communications? What's happening next that you're excited about?
Well, I should have corrected that because it's coffee before pickleball. So there's coffee's always
makes
first.
Sense, sure.
Yeah, coffee's always first.
Yeah, you got to get that energy going.
Yeah.
Where are we going for coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you like to go for coffee?
Oh, gosh.
Give a plug to your local roaster, will you?
All right. Well, okay. So locally, you're putting me on the spot. I mean, I am kind of a
That's what we do here.
I'm kind of a Starbucks girl. I'm sorry. I like making my own coffee at home. Mm-hmm. So I just enjoy the smell. I like the process, having it brew and sit in my kitchen. I don't know. There's just something about it. So I make more coffee, then I think I buy.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. We'll accept it.
Yeah.
Then where do you like to play pickleball?
There's a couple of courts near my house. I've played out on Kiowa before, which was a lot of fun. Here's the thing about me with pickleball. Pickleball, if you know anything about it, people take it a little too seriously.
I've heard it's very competitive.
They take it a little too seriously.
Yeah.
I just want to get a volley going. It's like ping pong. I don't care if it's on this side of the line or that. Just as long as we can keep it going for as many minutes as possible. Same thing goes with pickleball. I don't care if it's all the way outside the court. If I can get it and get it back over to you, that's all that matters.
That's
but some
very
people
generous
are
of you. You're a generous opponent.
No, I don't buy into all those rules. I'm not I have no intention of becoming a professional, so what do I care? And the people that I have played with have absolutely no intention of being a professional, but they act like it. And that's just too much for me. I'm not afraid to say it either. For lack of a better term, it's a little obnoxious.
Yeah. I understood. I lived not far from Crush Yard in Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
And people take it very seriously there. That's for sure.
I guess you got to take something seriously in life if it's a sport. I'm not sports inclined. So there's that, I don't care. I don't care what score I have at the end of the day. If I had fun and I got my, blood moving, that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, good. Okay, back to what's
Yes.
what's
Next
coming down the
thing.
pipeline
Oh,
next.
okay.
We've covered pickleball now. What is the next thing coming down the pipeline in communications that you're excited about? Is it
that I'm excited about? Well, I don't know so much if it's something that I'm excited about. It's a great question, and I have a lousy answer for it because just the industry is moving at the speed of light. So I don't really know what the future holds. I just know what I'm dealing with today. And my mission as a talk show host is to help people tell their story. And I think that 100 years ago, 100 years from now is always going to be the same, is to tell people's story and to try to tell it well or to help them facilitate the telling of their story, because whatever experience they've had in their life that they want to share could help somebody else. And that's really ultimately what you want to do. You just want to help the community. And it doesn't always have to be bells and whistles. It doesn't always have to be exciting, but there could be that nugget of information that changes someone's life. And that's really kind of what I stick to.
awesome?
Learn it from you and your show.
The power of storytelling. We're on board. You're preaching to the
Thank
converted
you.
here.
Yeah, because you'll notice on my social media, I'm not a poster. I should be, I guess. I should be better at it. I appreciate when others stick to it and do it well. I don't really have the patience for it. I don't know. I like dealing with people more. I just like seeing more people face to face and having that intimate connection with them. And I don't want to see that getting lost. So if we're talking about the future of communication, it just seems like there's always more and more barriers between people. This is wonderful because we're all in the same room together.
Yeah, it's nice.
It is nice. It is nice.
Yeah.
It's an energy thing. It's
It
an eye
really
contact
is.
thing. It's like, and the moment that you lose that pandemic, for instance, we did everything remotely. And that was tough. Technologically speaking, it could be rough, getting people's faces framed, just right to upwards of 20 to 25 minutes in some cases. But there's something lost there. And
That human connection.
the human connection.
Yeah.
So I would just hope that humanity is as much a part of communications as it ever was in the past.
I like that. Well said.
Thanks.
So how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, goodness. Well, they can find me. Well, if you want to learn more about Tide Point PR, it's tidepointpr.com, at Tide Point PR across the channels. And if you are interested in coming on my show, if you have a story that you want to share, learn more about me there. foxcharleston.com is our website. Gulen at foxcharleston.com is my email. And at Leyla Gulen TV, I think it is, across the channels. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Leyla Gulen, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
coming
so
on the show.
much.
We
Thank you
really
very
appreciate
much,
it.
Dawn.
Thank you so
very
much. It was
Kelly.
lovely connecting with you.
It was
Kelly,
great
lovely to
connect you.
co-host with you.
Yeah, this was
Our
fun.
first time together. This has been wonderful fun, and thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.